Do you know what it feels like for somebody to want you on their team? Does anybody here know what that feeling is like when maybe the teams are being chosen and that person reaches out their finger and they point right at you and they say, I want you with me? It's an incredible feeling. You know, this last week, I went over to the Sugar Grove campus. It's really nice because we're a multi-site church. All of our campus pastors get together from Naperville and Plano and Indian Creek and El Camino and Sugar Grove. We all get together, and we pray together, we catch up, we share what God's doing at each of our campuses, and we talk about the passage. So each of our messages, like our sermon outline, our message is all different. But across all of our campuses this morning, we're all preaching on the same text. And so we get to study that and share it. So as I was getting over there, ready for a great time with some of the other pastors, I noticed that there were a lot more cars there than usual. And I was wondering, what are all these cars doing? Vans, they were all there. And I saw this tiny little sign with an arrow, and it said, draft party. I thought, well, draft party, what does that mean? I don't know. Maybe some people were getting together and doing their fantasy football stuff. I don't keep track of what time of the year that's supposed to happen. So I thought maybe they're doing a fantasy football draft. And so I came in, I saw some people that I knew, some people who had kind of grown up at the Sugar Grove campus. And I asked somebody, what's going on with this draft party? Because I saw they had ESPN on and they were watching the MLB draft. I said, well, what's going on in here? And they said, hey, this young kid, his name is Logan. He's really good at baseball, and he's hoping that he's going to get drafted into the MLB today. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, getting drafted right out of high school. So kind of said hi to some people, and we went and we started having our meeting. So we were there, we were having our meeting, and thankfully it wasn't when we were praying or something. All of a sudden we heard this room erupt with joy and applause. And we went in there to see what was going on, and sure enough, Logan Wagner had been drafted right out of high school by the Los Angeles Dodgers. I was like, wow, that's a pretty good name there. And so everyone was in there. We couldn't believe it. They were high-fiving. They were hugging. They were encouraging one another. It was kind of quite the moment to behold. Because the Los Angeles Dodgers decided, Logan Wagner, we want you on our team. You know, some of us have experienced the opposite of that. Some of us know what it's like for no one to want us on their team. Some of us can remember back to elementary school and the times when it was time for kickball. You were the one left there, the last one standing. And no one else is picking you and saying, I want you on my team. Some of us have had that experience when we're looking for some friends, a friend group to hang out with and spend some of our weekends and celebrate our life with. And we're looking for that group of friends, and we look around and it doesn't seem as if anyone wants us in their group. Others of us, maybe it's when you're coming out of college, maybe as you're trying to enter into the workforce, into your desired field, maybe you get to that place and you're submitting your resume here and there, and you're waiting, doesn't anybody want me on their team, and you feel as though nobody wants you there. Well, the thing that we are going to see today is that Jesus recruits us onto his team. Today in our passage, we're going to see that Jesus points at us in our direction and says, I want you. And not only does he say, I want you on my team, but he says, I know about your past, and I'm going to fix all that. Jesus not only recruits us, but he also redeems us. That's what we're going to see, because you know what? In our passage today, we see that Jesus did that with a guy named Peter. A guy named Peter who had a whole lot of enthusiasm. But like people who have a whole lot of enthusiasm, sometimes they have some low lows as well. And so Peter is a guy who failed Jesus in a critical hour. And he's ashamed. He's experienced that rejection. He's wondering, how could I ever come back from something like this? But we're going to see that Jesus approaches even someone with that glaring failure in his past, Peter. Jesus is recruiting people to carry out his mission like that. I'm so encouraged by that. It's a big comfort for us. And so today we're going to see 3 different ways that Peter's redemption gives us hope. We're going to see the story of Peter's redemption unfold, and I'm going to send you home with 3 different ways that can give you hope for your life as well. Let me pray for us and ask for God to speak to us today through his word. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your work here within Aurora. Lord, I thank you for your work within our church, for these bold steps of faith that we get to celebrate over these last 6 months. Lord, I thank you that you've entrusted us with these young children to invest in and continue to teach about Jesus. Lord, I thank you. Just want to pick out one other campus. Lord, I thank you for the Naperville campus. Lord, for the new work you're doing there as they're getting things set up and getting things going and recruiting a team. Lord, I do pray for one particular prayer request they have. They're looking for a worship leader. God, I pray, along with all the brothers and sisters in this room, I pray that you would provide for them someone to be leading worship on a consistent basis. And Lord, as we come to this passage, Lord, as we come and we see what you have done in Peter's life, how you redeemed him from an absolute betrayal of you, Lord, would you remind us that you can redeem us from our worst moment as well. And Lord, I thank you that you don't just clean up the things that we've done wrong, but instead you turn us around and you set us on a trajectory to the future so that we can be used by you. Lord, I pray that you would speak to me, speak through me, speak to all of us today by the power of your Holy Spirit. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, amen. Amen. Well, like I said, there are 3 different ways we're going to see that Peter's redemption gives us hope. And the first way is this: Jesus does what we can't. Jesus does the things that we are not able to do. I heard a story this week about a guy named Paul. This is not the Apostle Paul, don't worry, I'm not going there. This guy named Paul, he had retired. He retired about 12 years ago and from today. And once he retired, he had a lot of time on his hands. He had a nice Chevy Tahoe that he enjoyed driving around. And what he found was that there were some people there in his home state of New York. There were some young people, some college students, who wanted to go to school but didn't have a ride. They didn't have a way to get there. He heard about this program for people who would help, and he said, hey, I can drive. I've got a vehicle. So what did he start doing? He drove this young lady to the University of Buffalo. He drove her there, and then somebody else needed a ride. And so he took somebody else, a young man, and soon, before he knew it, he had put 1,000 miles on his vehicle just by giving people a ride. Well, wouldn't you know it, about 10 years later, he'd put 60,000 miles on his vehicle, driving young students, helping them to do what they couldn't do on their own. It's a pretty cool story, and actually that first student, that first young lady that he took to the University of Buffalo, she is now a physician. Pretty cool to see how God can use those of us who will serve like that. But he got out there and he said, I want to do something for these individuals that they can't do themselves. And actually, Jesus does the same thing for us. There are things within our lives that we can't do ourselves. But Jesus is the one who comes and says, I can do that. I can take care of that. So today, if you've got your copy of God's Word with you, I want you to go ahead and open with me to the final chapter. The final chapter of John, it's John 21. Now, it's crazy because we're pretty much closing this thing out. We've been in the Gospel of John for, do you guys know about how many months? About 11 months. About 11 months, we've been walking through the life of Christ, seeing that whole thing unfold, seeing his ministry, and the way that the disciples were absolutely transformed. And last week, I sent you guys off with kind of the key verse of the whole passage, when John says that this whole book, these things, are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing, you may have life in his name. And basically, the way that he wrote that is that's kind of like the end of the movie. So the music swells, and all of a sudden, there it is, directed by Peter Jackson. Or if you're not a Lord of the Rings fan, maybe like directed by the Apostle John. Or maybe just like God the Father. Let's just do that. Directed by God the Father. It kind of comes to a close. That's kind of the formal ending of the book. But here's the thing. If you've ever read a book, just after the book ends, there's one more little thing, and it's called an epilogue. Yes, it's an epilogue. And so there at the end, they kind of finish the content of the book. But then you're sitting there, and at the end of a book, you may be wondering, but what about this? But what about that? And actually, we see that sometimes in some of our modern movies. Anyone here ever seen a Marvel movie? If you've ever seen a Marvel movie, you may know, hey, once the credit starts rolling, we're going to sit still. We got to keep watching because what is there going to be? A post-credits scene. We got to watch and we're going to see. They're going to tell us about one more thing. Oh, yes, the Avengers really did go get shawarma after, they saved New York, all right? And then if you're really good, you're like, you know what? I heard there's actually 2 post-credit scenes. We're going to wait for the second one as well. But you know what John pretty much gives to us? He gives us pretty much 2 post-credit scenes. He's finished out kind of the main content of this book. And now he says, for those of you who were wondering, whatever happened to Peter, because that guy messed up pretty bad, I want you to know how things turned out with him. He actually does this both with Peter and with John. He lets us know how both of those things ended. Now, of course, this is a part of the Gospel of John. It's always been circulated together, but it is something that kind of lands after the core part of the book. And so Jesus, he had risen from the dead. He had been showing up to different disciples at different times to show them that he's alive. And now he's revealing himself to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, the Sea of Galilee. And here is how he does it. He wants to come and set a few things straight, especially for Peter, who is feeling, I'm guessing, pretty sorry for himself. And you know what's amazing? Here's what it says in verse 21. After this, Jesus revealed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he revealed himself in this way. It's Jesus all along who is coming to reveal himself to the disciples. He's the one approaching them, coming to where they are. They're out there fishing long ago. In Luke chapter 5, they were out fishing, and Jesus came to them and invited them, why don't you come and follow me? The disciples are all locked inside that room after Jesus had been killed, right? And they're hiding, and Jesus comes to them, even though the door was locked. He did that twice, first on Easter Sunday, and then on that first church service they had the next Sunday. And now Jesus comes to them again in his gracious manner. He's the one who draws near to us. And you may be wondering who all is there, okay? Let's get a head count. Thankfully, verse 2 gives that to us. It lets us know Simon Peter was there. Thomas, called the twin, he wasn't called Doubting Thomas quite yet, but Thomas the twin. Nathanael of Cana in Galilee. He actually wasn't one of the 12, the official 12 disciples, but he is one of Jesus' disciples. Then it talks about the sons of Zebedee, so that's probably one of those is John, our author. And then there's 2 others of his disciples. And Simon Peter is with his friends, and I don't know, they must be sitting around trying to figure out what are we going to do. And like most times when guys are hanging out, they're like, I'm getting kind of hungry, all right? Let's get something to eat. Where can we eat? Let's find where's somewhere we can go eat. And the place they had available to them was to go get some fish. So Simon Peter said to them, hey, I am going fishing. They said to him, we'll go with you. They went out, they got into the boat, but that night, all night long, they caught nothing. That's the kind of fishing story I can relate to. Because I've only been fishing a handful of times, and I didn't have any handful of fish. I didn't catch any fish. I know what that's like not to catch any. But it's even maybe a little more demoralizing than that. If you've ever had a job within the gig economy, whether it's going and driving for Uber or going and doing DoorDash, to go out and spend all night with not a single job, not a single positive thing happening is super discouraging. And some have speculated that when Peter's going out fishing, he's like giving up on God. He's giving up on his relationship with Jesus. Now, the text doesn't tell us that, and I don't believe that's actually what's going on here. I think they're just continuing to go about their real life, going to try to get some food in their bellies, some food for their families. But they went out there to catch some fish, and nothing happened. And wouldn't you know, the darkest part of the night, the most discouraging moment, is the moment when Jesus and the light starts to show up. That's what the next verse tells us in verse 4. Just as day was breaking, the sun is just coming up, you're starting to be able to see some things, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Now our passage a little bit later on will tell us that they're about a football field away from Jesus. They're out on the water about a football, they don't say football field away, but I did the measurements, the math in my head. And so if you've ever stood at a football field and you're trying to see, maybe it's like really dark, you can't quite see, who is it over there? They're not sure who it is. But Jesus is going to continue to allow his own light to show for them what's going on in this situation. He calls out to them with a term of endearment, and he calls them children. Children. He cares about them. Children, do you have any fish? And they answer him with a very uncomplicated answer. One word. No. No, it's very discouraging to have to say that. Now here's the thing. About 6 chapters ago, in John chapter 15, Jesus told the disciples something. He said, apart from me, you can do nothing. And now here in this moment, the disciples they're seeing it's true. Apart from Jesus, we can do nothing. So Jesus has a different plan for them. He wants to provide for them. And I think Jesus even wanted to reenact a miracle that he had done all the way back in Luke chapter 5, right before some of the disciples followed him. Because Jesus tells them, hey, I want you to cast the net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they're like, sure, we'll give it a shot. They cast it, and now they were not able to haul it in because of the quantity of the fish. After all night, Jesus says, hey, this is a step of obedience I call you to take. I want to provide for you. Take this one step. They do it, and all of a sudden, Jesus has provided for them more than they could ever have imagined. That's actually just what happened in Luke chapter 5. Peter and the other disciples had not been able to catch anything, and Jesus told them what to do differently, and all of a sudden they caught all these fish. That was one of the moments that Peter decided to follow Jesus. And as they're over there, they must be pulling up these fish. They're like, oh my goodness, we got it. We got all the fish that we're going to need, and they start pulling it in, and maybe John, the disciple, is there, and all of a sudden it dawns on him who it was. And he looks over and he realizes it was Jesus. And so he calls out to Peter and he tells him, he says, it is the Lord. And when Simon Peter realizes, John was the first one to realize that, but Peter is the first one to act. What does he do? He's like, let me grab my stuff. He grabs his outer garment, throws it on, and he jumps in the water, presumably to race to Jesus as fast as he could. Now, I've never, if I'm jumping in a pool, I've never, put on more clothes, because that's kind of weird. You may be wondering, why did he do that? Well, I've got the same question. My guess is he probably didn't want to go have a great conversation with Jesus in his undergarments, all right? Because that's what he was fishing in. So he's like, let me put this thing on, and I'm going to get over to Jesus. So he jumps in the water, and it seems that he races over there. The other disciples were left with all the fish, and they came dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far off from the land, about 100 yards off. That's where I'm getting the football field. Maybe you're here today and you've been trying to do something that only God can do. It's true. Jesus does what we can't. And maybe there's something within your life that you want to see change, and you're wondering why it hasn't happened because you're using your best strategies. Maybe in your relationship with your spouse, you see something that you'd like to change, and you've been dropping hints. And you've been maybe trying to lean things in that direction. You've been trying to change them. But guess what? It's not us who changes people. It's God. Jesus can, even though we can't. Maybe you've got a real tangible need within your life. Just like the disciples had a need for fish. They had a need for food. They had a need for finances. Maybe that's something you have within your life and you just can't seem to get a break. What I want you to know is that Jesus can, even when we can't. Or maybe it's something within your own life, within your own heart, your own mind, that you want to be different, a life change you want to see within yourself, and you've tried your best strategies, but you just can't get yourself to change. Even when it comes to yourself, you need to know that Jesus is the one who can. Jesus is the one we can turn to, and he can and he will do his will in his time. You know, Peter and John learned that. They learned that in this moment. They learned that what Jesus had explained in John chapter 15 was true. Whoever abides in Jesus, and Jesus in him, he it is that bears much fruit. And Jesus said, for apart from me, you can do nothing. So, the first way that Peter's redemption moment gives us hope is that we can see Jesus can do what we can't. But there is another reason. There's another reason we can take hope from this, because you may be sitting here like, all right, I get it. I can't do the supernatural things that need to be done. Everything good that I have is a gift from God. I recognize that I can't even catch one fish unless God ordains it to be. But you may be sitting there and wondering like, but is there anything I'm supposed to do? Should I even try anymore? Am I left empty-handed and I'm just kind of along for the ride here? The answer is no. Because the second thing that gives us hope is that Jesus uses what we've been given. Jesus uses the things that have been given and entrusted to us. I heard a cool story this last week about a quarterback named Kirk Cousins. We got any Minnesota Vikings fans in the house? All right. Well, you might like Kirk Cousins just a little bit after I tell you what I'm about to tell you. Kirk Cousins, when he was a young man, obviously he was working towards his career in the NFL, but he heard when he was in high school about a ministry called the International Justice Mission, a mission that's dedicated to ending both slavery and sex trafficking. And when he heard about this, he walked out of that service and he prayed to God and he said, God, would you entrust me with more so I can give more? I don't know how I can really make a difference here at this point in my life, but I pray that you would entrust me with more so that I can give more. So he pursued actually a career within the NFL. We got the MLB earlier, we got the NFL now. Well, there's a joke about the NFL, about the fact that NFL stands for not for long. Like your career is not going to last for long. Some people go in there, they get a big signing check, and they're making millions, and they don't realize it's only going to be for a few years. So when Kirk Cousins was drafted, and he was working in Washington, he was signed for a $2.5 million deal. And then he got signed for a $20 million deal, and then $24 million, and more recently, $84 million. All right, he's got quite a bit of finances that he's able to deal with. But he and his wife, as professing believers, they've committed themselves to living in such a way that they will be able to continue to give. The things that they have been given, they want to steward well and use those both to help end sex trafficking and slavery, and also for God's purpose within the world. So Kirk Cousins, like him a little better. It's pretty cool to see God working within someone like that. But here's the thing. That's a great example of being able to use what God has given us for his mission, for his purposes. And Jesus wanted his disciples to see, I have given you some things, and I want you to use those for my glory. Here's how that unfolded. Verse 9 says this. When they got out on land, they finally get there, they saw a charcoal fire in place with fish laid out on it and bread. And they may be asking that question, wait a second, Jesus, you already have food. How'd you do that? Well, we're not sure how he did it. But the reality is Jesus can do it all. Jesus can take care of business. He can do what he needs to do, but he invites us to be a part of his work. He invites us to be part of it. And so Jesus in verse 10 said to them, bring some of the fish that you have just caught. Now, when Jesus says that you have just caught, I'm not sure, does that really count? Jesus pretty much did the work, right? They call themselves fishermen, but Jesus was the one who made the fish be caught, right? And so, but Jesus still says, the disciples had acted in obedience, and so Jesus says, bring some of the fish that you have just caught. Jesus entrusted those things to them, and then now he wants to use it. So Peter ran, he grabbed that thing, the haul, brought it full of fish. How many fish? 153. That's about 153 more fish than I caught the last time I went fishing. All right? And why do they count it? You're like, is there some special significance Does 153 mean something? Is like 50 times 3 plus 3 to represent the Trinity? Is it like you add up the three main words in the last verse? How many times they've been used in the Gospel of John, and that adds up 153? Well, those are actually like all things that people have speculated over the years, and I'm not sure. None of them seem like a clear winner. I think it's to let us know there was a lot of fish. There was a lot, and they would count them, right? If they're going to go sell them, they're going to count them and make sure. Maybe it was John that was the one who counted them. But after they realized there were so many, they brought it, and Jesus invites them. What an invitation. Come and have breakfast. Come and have breakfast. Long ago, years ago, Jesus had invited them, come and see. Come and see. Come and see who I am. Come and see what I can do. Come and see how I'm going to change you in your life. And now Jesus is inviting them because they've already seen who he is. They've already seen what he can do. They've already seen his death, burial, and resurrection occur. And now Jesus says, come and eat breakfast with me. I'm going to show you. I'm going to continue to provide for you. I'm going to continue to provide for you. It's kind of cool. They had the Last Supper, and now they've got the last breakfast, right? They're having breakfast. It's great. Now, a lot of the disciples seem like they had some burning questions within their mind. I would have as well, and actually I still kind of do. So Jesus, where have you been? Where did you go? Or have you been telling other people? It seems like maybe you can teleport. We're not sure. How is this working? How does your body work now? You've got a glorified body. What all is going on here? Could you tell us all these things? But they don't dare ask some of those questions. It says, none of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. They were absolutely convinced. They knew this is Jesus, and we can trust him. But Jesus came, he took the bread, and he said to them, he gave it to them, and so with the fish. Jesus is not the one who just gave the wine to those who needed it at the wedding at Cana. Jesus is not just the one who fed the 5,000. He's the one who fed his disciples here on the beach that day, and the one who will continue to sustain us until we join him in eternity when he calls us home. It's incredible, and now he gives us an opportunity. I'm going to continue to sustain you, and I want you to turn around and to do my work. I'm going to give you opportunities to serve me, and I want you to continue in that. And verse 14 tells us it was the third time that Jesus was revealed to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Jesus gave the disciples something that they could offer back to him. Now maybe you're sitting here today and you're like, all right, Jesus uses what we've been given. But you may be thinking, I'm not sure what I've been given. I'm not sure what it is that I have to offer to God. God, I don't feel like I have a lot to offer you at this point. Maybe you've got struggles in different areas of your life and you're wondering, well, how am I going to give anything back to God? But here's the truth. Every good and perfect gift is from above. Everything that you have, you are a steward of, called to go out and to carry out God's mission within the world. And if you're a believer here today, if the Son has set you free and you are free indeed, you have been entrusted with the gifts of the Holy Spirit, with the spiritual gifts. Romans chapter 12 tells us a little bit about this, that we're like a body. The church here is like a body. And all of us, with our own physical bodies, hopefully we've all got 10 fingers, 10 toes. We've got 2 feet to take us where we need to go. We've got some ears that help us listen, some eyes that help us to notice what's going on. We've got a belly that we need to be fed. We've got some muscles that need to be exercised as we go and try to carry out what we're doing with our bodies, and the church is no different. The church is no different. We all are described like different parts of the body that do different things, and that's great. Romans chapter 12 tells us there are different people with different gifts, some with the gift of prophecy or preaching. Some with the gift of service who say, I'm just ready to serve. I'm ready to set up those chairs. I'm ready to carry those tables. Anything you need, I'm here to help out. Cooking some meals for someone. Some of those gifted in teaching. We got people who are teaching in small groups, preaching, teaching our Sunday school class for our young ones. We got some who've been gifted with exhortation or encouraging others. Some are gifted with generosity and say, hey, you know what? I am going to absolutely help to fund God's work within the church. Others who are leaders, others who are filled with acts of mercy. There are all sorts of different gifts that we have been given. So if you're sitting here, you're like, you know what? I'm not sure what gifts I have. Well, hey, get together with a mature believer and say, hey, you got any ideas? We've got some assessments available. We got some different things where you can kind of take a little assessment and it'll kind of give you some ideas of some different ways that God may have gifted you. But here's the encouraging thing. Whether it's stepping into a new form or a new level of generosity, whether it's serving within our children's ministry or our student ministry, whether it is going out and stepping into a new position of leadership, leading a small group or serving on our elder team, whatever it is, it takes a willingness to be used by God. And so my question for you is, do you want to be used by God? Do you want to be sent out? Do you want to be not just redeemed and now you're going to sit around until the end of your life, but do you want to be recruited and sent out by Jesus to carry out his purpose within your life? My encouragement to you is to bring the fish that Jesus has put into your nets. The 153 fish. Maybe you got five fish. Maybe you've only got 2 fish. But you know what we saw a little bit earlier? God can even use the one with 5 loaves and 2 fish. For those of us who are willing to bring our offering before him, what he's given us, he can use us in incredible ways. So, Jesus does the things that we are incapable of doing, and I'm thankful because there's a lot of things I can't do. Jesus also uses the things that he has entrusted to us. Sometimes it feels clumsy to start that out, but I encourage you to take those bold steps of faith. But there's one final thing. There's one final way that Peter's redemption gives us hope. And that's because of this. Jesus redeems and recruits people with a past. Jesus redeems and recruits the people who have a checkered past, we could say. I heard a story this week about a young man named Eden Chen. Eden Chen used to be a teenage shoplifter and a video game player. He was really good. All right, so he grew up in the church, but then he kind of left. He lived in Washington, D.C., then he moved to Hong Kong with his parents. Then he came back and he was living in, let me get this right, Maryland. And he was a part of a church, but he kind of strayed because in his teenage years, the things that he absolutely was chasing after was playing video games, shoplifting, materialism, and chasing girls. Those are the things that he was pursuing within his life. He and his friends, they would go to the mall, and it was a competition to see who could steal the highest value of stuff, from who could walk out of the mall having stolen all these things. But he says that thankfully, God didn't let him continue down that path. Actually, at one point, he was in the top 10 Warcraft 3 players in North America. So I never played Warcraft 3, but for those of you who have, he's really good at it, all right? But here's the thing. He started to attend church again. He started to draw near back to the Lord, and his youth pastor encouraged him to go on a mission trip to Nashville, and so he did. And while he was there, he met some missionaries, those who were serving the Lord. They didn't have a lot of stuff. In fact, they actually struggled in some areas, it sounded like financially. But the reality was he had never seen anyone with more joy. He had never seen anyone who was more filled with just fulfillment, for the way that they were living their lives out. And that caused him to start to think again about his relationship with God. He thought, well, if there is a God, I'm sure that he's revealing himself. He must have revealed himself somehow. So he started to go through some of the different world religions. He studied all the way through Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And he finally came to the place where he said, I believe that Christianity is the faith that explains all of life's biggest questions the best. It's the one that has the answers. He read C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, and he believed it to be one of the most logical explanations of Christian faith that he had ever come across. And so what did he do? He decided to follow the Lord. He left all those things behind. He had a past. He probably could have gone to jail for a long time for some of the things that he had done. But he was redeemed out of that, and not only that, he was recruited by Jesus to go and to do good within the world. With all of his tech expertise, he started up lots of different companies, and actually one of the organizations that he started up was called the Fisherman Labs. Fisherman Labs. And he wanted to model themselves after the 12 disciples who went out and were followers of Jesus. Pretty cool. They're serving different startups and Fortune 100 companies. And he goes out and he's continuing, and he recognized that God could redeem him and he could be used for God's mission within the world. Well, guess what? We're about to see Peter's redemption moment. Because here we are, and we see Peter sitting at a charcoal fire with Jesus. And the last time that we saw Peter sitting at a charcoal fire, he was denying Jesus. He was telling people, even people with no status, I believe it was a slave girl, where he said, no, absolutely, I don't even know this guy. Starting to speak with cursing, that he was saying, no, absolutely not. I don't know anything about this Jesus guy. I'm not with him. I don't like him. Keep me away from him. And now he's sitting again with Jesus at a charcoal fire, and it's time for Jesus to address that stuff. So verse 15 says this: when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? We're not sure if he was talking about, do you love me more than these fish? Do you love me more than you love these disciples? Do you love me more than these disciples love me? We're not sure, but probably it means all of it. And Jesus asked him, do you love me more than these? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, feed my lambs. Jesus offers him redemption, and he turns around and he recruits him for his cause as a church leader. But Jesus doesn't stop there, because Jesus asks him again. Verse 18, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Then he said to him the second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. He said to him, tend my sheep. So first we got feed my lambs, right? Give the spiritual nourishment that the young sheep or disciples, that the young disciples need. Give the nourishment to these new and needing to mature sheep or disciples. Then he says, the call that he has is tend my sheep. For their ongoing needs, take care of them. And actually, in just a minute, Jesus is going to give him a third one, which is not to feed my lambs, but feed my sheep. Continue to lead spiritually some of these even mature believers. So Jesus gives them those three calls. And here's the thing. When Jesus asks him the first time, do you love me? He says, yes, you know that I love you. Then Jesus asks again, do you love me? Peter says, you know that I love you. And the third time, Jesus asks him again. And I'm not sure if Peter recognized at that moment that just as he had betrayed Jesus 3 times, Jesus is bringing attention to that and giving him a chance for redemption. But Peter, he was grieved. Peter was grieved because he said to him the third time, do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus says to him, feed my sheep. It's amazing. Jesus has come. He's given Peter a chance for redemption, and he's actually given him redemption. He's sending him out to go be a leader within the church. And then Peter, I think before, had said he was so zealous. He was making these promises to Jesus. Jesus, I'm gonna go with you to the end. I'll do anything for you, even if I'll die, I believe he said. And now at this moment, Jesus makes it clear to Peter, that's actually how far you're going to go, Peter. I'm going to give you a chance to follow me all the way to the point of death. And that's what Jesus says in verse 18. Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, and these are some things that people in ancient times would have known what they meant, you will stretch out your hands. This means to be crucified. And another will dress you and carry where you do not want to go. He says, Peter, you're going to go with me to the end. Not only have you followed me when we were out doing ministry, Not only did you follow me when I called you to come out of the boat and you came to the shore and we've been enjoying this moment, well, you're going to follow me even to the point of death. You're going to follow me all the way to the end. And you think, wow, that's pretty dramatic for someone to give their life for Jesus. Is that something that God likes? Does God want to see Peter die? What's going on here? The fact is that Peter was going out and he was carrying out God's mission. There are people in the world who don't want to see that happen. And so sometimes as a byproduct of following Jesus the way that we're supposed to, it leads to martyrdom. But verse 19 tells us what God's perspective of Peter's death would be. This he said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. Peter's been redeemed even to the point that he would be able to bring glory to God even in his death. So the final call, at the end of this verse, we go all the way back to the very beginning. We begin where we started, and Jesus gives Peter one more invitation. And after saying this, he said to him, "Follow me. Follow me. Follow me the way you've been doing. Follow me the way you will doing, and for the rest of your life, you and all the other disciples show an example to the others, but you yourself, in your enjoyment of your relationship with God, follow me." And Peter did just that. You know, after Logan was drafted into the MLB on Monday, I was over there and I heard some of the different people talking, and one of the relatives said this: "I guess we're Dodgers fans now. All right, I guess those are the the games we're going to be watching. I guess we're Dodgers fans now." And here's the thing: when we're recruited by Jesus, that changes our outlook on everything. Because not only has Jesus redeemed us and recruited us, but now we look around and we say, well, I guess I'm a follower of Jesus now. I guess my whole life is about Him. I guess my service is about Him. I guess even to the point of my death, I want my life to be all about Jesus. We've not only been redeemed by Jesus, we've been recruited by Him. So what's my final call to you for this passage? What's my final call for you? Well, if you're not a believer here today, if you've never turned to Jesus and really said, "Jesus, I'm a sinner, please save me. I trust you 100% to be my Savior, and I turn away from my sin. I repent of that." If you've never done that before, make today the day. Heed the words of Jesus, follow me. Maybe you have a past that you're ashamed of. Some things you think, man, I really messed it up. I did some things. Maybe you're worried about some of those things continuing to come back to haunt you. Say, no, I can never go serve in that type of way. I can never be used by God because of what I've done, but I want you to know Jesus redeems people like me. And Jesus redeems people like Peter. And Jesus redeems people like you. Or maybe you're here today and you've been redeemed. And you're enjoying that, you're living in light of that, and maybe Jesus is recruiting you to go out on His mission. Maybe there are some bold steps of faith, whether it's serving here within the church, whether it's bringing the gospel to the people within your lives, whether it's being called to missions on the mission field. Whatever it is that God is calling you to do, I want to encourage you to take that step because you have been recruited. Take to heart Jesus' invitation, follow me. There's no better pursuit than to follow Jesus. That's why I'm so glad Jesus wants us on His team.